You ever look back at a memory so blurred, you're not even sure it really happened the way you remember it? Yeah, that's how this starts. I don't remember exactly when it happened, a few winters ago maybe. I want to say it was my first year in college, back when everything felt too big and too fast, and kind of lonely if I'm honest. I was in Boston trying to keep up with life and school and this version of myself I thought I was supposed to be. Meanwhile, my family was all the way back in Serbia. Different time zone, different world. It was around Christmas. Everyone at school was talking about going home, friends, parties, traditions. You know, the whole cozy holiday movie montage thing. I didn't have that. I didn't even plan to go back at first. But something in me cracked that week. Maybe it was the cold, or the silence of the dorms, or the way social media makes you feel like the only person in the world who's alone. I don't know. So I booked a flight. Last minute, impulsive, classic me. I told myself it'd be a nice surprise. Get a taste of something familiar, food, people, smells, language, something grounding. I packed 2 bags and dragged myself to Logan International, already regretting it the second I walked in. It was a zoo, the kind of chaos that makes you feel smaller than you already do. Still, I thought it'd be worth it. I needed something to look forward to. I needed to feel like I was going somewhere. I had no idea that the worst part of this trip wouldn't be the layover or the jet lag. It would be what happened somewhere up in the sky. Honestly, I should have taken it as a sign when the gate agent announced they were overbooked. You ever hear that word, overbooked, and just immediately feel your stomach drop? Everyone started shifting around, gate crowd forming like a mosh pit. It was chaos. People were hoisting suitcases over each other's heads, arguing about who boarded first, the works. I had 2 carry-ons, both too heavy, both probably over the weight limit. No one said anything though, they were too busy juggling 10 other problems. Eventually, I get to my seat, middle. Of course, 8 hours. Logan to Munich. I knew it wasn't going to be comfortable. Economy never is, but this felt different. I felt wedged, not sitting, not resting, just inserted. Like I was part of the plane itself, just this passive object between 2 actual humans. The guy to my right didn't give me much to work with. Quiet, broad shoulders, buried in some book I couldn't see the cover of. Didn't move much, didn't even glance at me. Honestly, ideal neighbor. But the guy on my left, yeah, that was a different story. I noticed him before we even took off. Something about how he sat, like his body couldn't quite agree with itself. He kept rubbing his forearms, pressing them like something was crawling under the skin. Small, tight movements, twitchy, like a wire was loose somewhere. He wasn't loud, but the silence around him felt loud. He didn't speak, not yet, but I felt him. The way you feel a storm before it breaks. I tried brushing it off. Maybe he was just anxious. I mean, people hate flying. Maybe I was just tired and projecting. But even with all that rationalizing, I felt it, that off-kilter pressure. Like something was brewing beside me, and I was the only one who noticed. I remember thinking, I just need to make it through this flight. That was my whole strategy. Watch something, zone out, forget where I was. So I pulled up Mindhunter, which, yeah, looking back, maybe not the best choice when you're stuck next to a stranger who already makes your skin crawl, but it was already downloaded, and I just wanted to disappear into something. I think it started maybe 20 minutes in. I didn't catch the moment exactly, but I felt it, that buzz, that thing that happens when someone's staring at you and your body knows before your brain does. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't random. He was looking at me. Not the screen, not the aisle, me. Every time I glanced down or shifted, he didn't flinch, just stayed locked in. I tried to be rational, told myself maybe he was tired, maybe he wasn't even seeing me, maybe he had some kind of condition, or maybe he was high or something. I threw every possibility at it like a shield, because if I believed the truth that he was watching me on purpose, I'd spiral. But the longer it went on, the harder it got to convince myself it was harmless. His body stayed still, unnaturally still, except for this slight tapping of his fingers against the armrest. His eyes were weirdly focused, like he was studying something. Not watching, studying. I don't know how to explain it. And the thing is, he hadn't even said a word to me yet. But somehow, that silence felt louder than any threat, because I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know if he was waiting. I just knew I was being watched, and that was enough to keep my mind running circles around itself for the rest of the flight. There was this moment midway through the flight, maybe a little earlier, where my chest felt tight and I realized I couldn't fake normal anymore. I'd been pretending for a while, pretending that if I just looked away, kept my headphones in, kept my gaze straight ahead, the guy on my left would just get bored. Maybe he'd fall asleep, maybe I would, but the silence wasn't normal. His stare wasn't normal. My thoughts weren't normal anymore either. So I did the one thing I thought might help without turning it into a whole thing. I caught a flight attendant as she passed, gave her this half smile like I wasn't spiraling inside, and told her I wasn't feeling great. I mumbled something about nausea, or maybe needing more space. I don't even remember exactly. I just asked if there were any other seats available. Somewhere else. Anywhere else. She nodded, all polite and pleasant, said she'd go check and be right back. And then she didn't come back. I kept looking up the aisle every few minutes, watching for her, hoping for a sign, a gesture, nothing. I thought maybe she got caught up in meal service, or forgot, or didn't take me seriously. But as the minutes dragged on, that hope started drying up. I was stuck, and I know it sounds dramatic. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't said anything at that point, but I've never felt so unsafe in my life. It was this unspoken pressure, like sitting next to a live wire with no idea when it might spark. I didn't eat, couldn't even sip water. I just sat there, stiff and frozen, and trying not to show anything on my face. Because if he saw fear, I didn't know what he'd do. I just wanted the plane to land. That's all I kept thinking. Just get me back on the ground. The second the wheels hit the tarmac, I felt my whole body uncoil, not in a relaxed way, more like something inside me was finally allowed to snap. I unbuckled before they even made the announcement. I just couldn't stay in that seat one more second. I didn't even look at the guy next to me, or the one on the other side. I grabbed my bag, shoved past someone's elbow, and fixed my eyes on the exit. It was Munich, cold, gray, too early for any of it to make sense. But I stepped off that plane like it was a lifeboat, and the whole thing was sinking behind me. I don't remember much about the airport itself, just the hush, the lights, the weird fog of exhaustion that settles over you after a long flight and a longer anxiety attack. I moved on autopilot, got to my connecting gate, waited, boarded, landed in Belgrade later that same day. Familiar language, familiar air, familiar people. It should have felt like relief, but I didn't tell anyone. Not when they hugged me at arrivals, not over dinner, not even when my mom asked how the flight was. I wanted the break to feel like an actual break, and saying the words out loud would have made it real, would have forced me to explain something I still didn't fully understand. But it stuck with me. That whole flight, that man, the silence, the way his presence seemed to fill every inch of air I was trying to breathe. And I kept wondering, did anyone else see it? Did anyone else feel it? Or was it just me? And if it was just me, why did it feel like I'd left something dangerous 38,000 feet in the air? It was one of those late January days, the kind where everything feels like it's happening underwater. My break was almost over. I was repacking the same suitcase I'd thrown together weeks ago, stuffed clothes, chargers, receipts, some little Christmas gifts I hadn't even looked at properly. Just going through the motions, folding, zipping, checking flight times on my phone. And then I found it. I was digging through my old canvas tote, the one I'd carried during the trip, onto the flight around Belgrade, when my fingers brushed something folded, something that shouldn't have been there. A note, thin paper, sharp edges, tucked into the side pocket like it had been waiting. I didn't open it right away. I don't know why. I just stood there staring at it, holding it like it was something toxic. I already had a sinking feeling, that kind of dread that settles in your stomach before your brain can even articulate it. When I did finally unfold it, I wished I hadn't. It wasn't long, just a few sentences, but it was enough to turn my blood cold. Something about skin, something about wanting to see what I looked like underneath it. I read it once, then again. I kept thinking, this can't be real. Maybe it was a sick joke. Maybe someone else dropped it in by mistake. Maybe it wasn't even meant for me. But it was in my bag. The bag that was with me on that flight. The bag that had been under the seat next to him. I didn't scream. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even throw it away. I just sat with it. Silent, still, and the worst part, I already knew who had left it. It's strange how life just picks back up again. I returned to Boston like nothing had happened. Classes, routines, snow piling up in the corners of sidewalks. I was back in the world of deadlines and dorm food, and pretending that everything was normal. I buried that flight somewhere in the back of my head, like it had all just been a weird, tense dream. And then one day my cousin sent me a message. Just a link, no context, no warning. It was a local German news site, an article. The headline alone made my stomach twist. Something about a man arrested for a string of violent crimes. Assault, attempted abduction, murder. I didn't want to read it, but I did. The photo, that's what broke me. That's what brought it all back like a punch straight to the chest. It was him. There was no mistaking it. Same face, same stillness in the eyes, same blank, unreadable stare that had been burning into me from inches away on that plane. My brain tried to reject it, tried to rationalize, to argue, but I knew. I felt it in my bones before I ever saw that article. I'd felt it the entire flight. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of nausea before. The kind that comes from knowing just how close you were to something that could have changed or ended your life. I stopped flying home for Christmas after that. Not because I hate flying. That would be too simple. It's more that I can't stop thinking, replaying. What if I hadn't gotten off that plane so fast? What if I had fallen asleep earlier? What if that note wasn't just a note? I don't have the answers. I don't think I want them. I touched down in Portland on a cool, gray afternoon, one of those days that kind of blends into itself, where the sky never fully decides if it wants to rain. I'd been meaning to cross Portland off my list for a while, but plans with friends always had a way of falling through. Money issues, timing, someone backing out last minute, you know how it goes. Eventually, I just stopped waiting on anyone and started doing these trips solo. The hotel I booked was in Old Town. Not luxury by any stretch, but it was close to everything I wanted to see. I figured I'd spend more time out and about anyway, not holed up in a room. I remember rolling my little carry-on through the lobby, that familiar mix of tired and curious setting in. Just as I was reaching the front desk, there was this guy, maybe mid-30s, kinda scruffy but put together in that I travel a lot kind of way. The type who seems like he's always in a new city but never lost in one. He made a little comment, something casual. I don't even remember what exactly, but it was enough to get a short exchange going. Harmless, friendly. When he found out we were headed to the same floor, he offered to carry my bag. I didn't think much of it. I've been on enough solo trips to know the difference between creepy and courteous. Or, at least, I thought I did. He brought the bag to my room, set it down just outside the door, nodded, and left. That was it. No lingering, no weird vibes. Just a helpful stranger. Still, I catch myself wondering if I should have said no. I didn't feel uneasy then. But that's the thing, right? You don't always feel it at first. It was a few hours after check-in. I'd gone out to grab a quick bite and came back through the lobby, feeling that usual solo travel buzz, half freedom, half quiet paranoia. As I was about to head toward the elevators, the woman at the front desk, different from the one who checked me in, motioned me over. At first, I thought maybe there was an issue with my card or my booking or something. But no, it was about him. I hadn't brought him up. Not once. She mentioned that she'd noticed a guy hovering outside the entrance earlier that day, standing around without coming in for a while. Then, just moments after I walked through the doors, he followed behind me, said she didn't recall checking him in. She couldn't be sure, of course, but it didn't sit right with her. She thought I should know. That conversation didn't sit right with me either. I left the desk with this knot in my stomach, like a shadow had followed me back upstairs without ever stepping into the light. I tried brushing it off. I told myself maybe she was being overly cautious. Maybe he was staying there and she just didn't recognize him yet. But deep down I felt that slow, creeping discomfort. I kept replaying our interaction at the elevator, trying to see if I'd missed something, some weird tone, some strange expression. I couldn't find anything obvious, and that somehow made it worse. Was I just being paranoid? Was he waiting there for anyone? Or had I unknowingly made myself the target the second I walked through the door? The timing, it was too close, too smooth, and I started to think, maybe it wasn't a coincidence at all. I remember that morning starting off pretty normal. Slept in a bit, had one of those dry hotel muffins and 2 bitter coffee, and decided to head down toward the waterfront. I always try to walk as much as I can when I travel. Just wander without a plan, take in the vibe of a place without staring at my phone the whole time. That's what I was doing, just me, the sound of distant gulls and the steady rhythm of foot traffic on the sidewalk. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Portland's got that sort of calm chaos to it, people always moving but never in a rush. But then I started to notice something. Not someone directly following me, not in a movie-style way where they're tailing you close behind, but more like a pattern, a presence. It's hard to explain. I'd turn a corner and glance at a window and catch a shape behind me that looked familiar. I'd slow down and hear footsteps slow down too, not right next to me, not close enough to call out, but enough, just enough. I stopped by the Riverwalk and tried to focus on the view, hoping it was just in my head, but that feeling didn't leave. I kept catching movement in my side vision. Same hoodie, same posture, just far enough back that I could never be certain. Eventually I slipped into a small coffee shop, took a seat by the window, and sat there pretending to scroll on my phone. I stayed for maybe 40 minutes, watching people come and go, no sign of him. Or maybe I missed him. Maybe he followed me in and left quietly, or maybe it wasn't even him at all. But the weirdest part, I didn't feel relieved. I just felt watched. I was still trying to unwind from the day, feet sore from walking, head full of that lingering unease from earlier. I'd taken a shower, changed into something comfortable, and was stretched out on the bed, flipping through TV channels more out of habit than interest. I wasn't expecting anything or anyone. It was only my first night there. Then I heard the knock. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was almost too soft, like whoever was on the other side didn't really want me to hear it. Just a couple of taps. And then I think I heard a voice. Not even words, really. Just a low sound, almost like someone clearing their throat or trying to say something quietly. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. I got up, heart starting to pick up, and walked slowly to the door. I looked through the peephole, half expecting to see one of those rolling housekeeping carts or someone walking by, but there was no one. Nothing. The hallway was completely still. Too still. I just stood there staring, trying to make sense of it. Was I imagining things? Did someone knock on the wrong door? But something about it didn't feel like an accident. It felt intentional, off, like it was just for me. Like whoever it was wanted to see if I'd open the door. That's when I called the front desk. I tried to sound calm, casual. They told me no one had been sent to my room. No room service, no housekeeping, nothing. I asked if someone could come check the floor anyway. Then I hung up and started pacing. My heart wouldn't slow down. I couldn't shake the thought, what if it was someone? What if I had opened the door? What were they waiting for? Dinner should have been the thing to reset my head. Just some quiet time, food, a change of scenery. I sat by a window, tried to enjoy the sounds of clinking glasses and distant laughter, like everything was normal. But I kept checking my phone, watching the time. My thoughts kept dragging me back to the hotel, to the knock, to the silence on the other side of the door. When I finally got back, it was darker out. The lobby felt quieter, dimmer. The woman from earlier wasn't at the desk anymore. Someone new was there. I didn't want to come off as paranoid, but I figured if I didn't say something, I'd just keep spiraling. So I told him. I explained what happened. The knock, the voice, the empty hallway. I was expecting him to brush it off, maybe say it was a mix-up. But instead, he checked the cameras. After a few minutes, he told me there was no one on my floor during the time I mentioned. No visible movement. Nothing that stood out, but and this stuck with me. He said that part of the hallway near the stairwell wasn't fully covered, a blind spot. That hit me hard. It's not like it confirmed anything, but it didn't exactly rule things out either. If someone had been there, if someone had been watching or listening or waiting, they could have easily stayed out of sight. I stood in the elevator, replaying that knock again and again, thinking about how someone could have been right there, inches from my door, and I'd never know. The missing pieces weren't adding up. They weren't even pieces, they were shadows, just out of reach. The more I tried to hold on to them, the more they slipped through. I couldn't fall asleep right away. My body was tired, but my brain just wouldn't let go of the day. Too many what-ifs, too many fragments I couldn't connect. I ended up leaving the TV on, something old and familiar playing low in the background. The kind of noise that helps you pretend everything's normal. I must have started to drift off, not fully asleep but not awake either. That half state where dreams and real life start to blend, and that's when I felt it. The mattress. It shifted, just slightly at first, like someone had leaned on it, then more, like someone was climbing on. For a second, I honestly thought I was dreaming. That's how surreal it felt. But then there was weight. Real, undeniable weight. I turned my head and saw him. Dark hoodie, face partially hidden behind a cloth mask. Some kind of hat pulled low. I couldn't see his eyes. That scared me more than anything. I couldn't think. I just reacted. Tried to push away. Tried to scream. I still don't know if I made any actual sound or just thought I did. He reached for me, maybe trying to cover my mouth. Maybe worse. I don't know. It felt like everything was happening underwater. And then banging. Loud, urgent banging on the door. It jolted everything back into focus. The man flinched. Everything snapped. He bolted. I heard someone yell. A body hit the floor outside. Then more voices. Footsteps. A rush of sound I couldn't place. I sat there shaking, not even fully processing what had just happened. All I could think was, I hadn't locked the top latch. I always do. But that night, I didn't, and he was already in. It all moved so fast after that. I remember hotel staff rushing in, other guests in the hallway, someone helping me sit down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I don't even remember what I said to the first officer who showed up. I think I just kept pointing at the door. The rest is hazy. Blurred lines between voices and flashing lights and that sick feeling that doesn't really go away. They moved me to a different room and said they'd comp the rest of my stay. Polite, apologetic, professional, like it was something they'd rehearsed. And then came the part that still messes with me. They told me whoever got into my room had used a master key, not picked the lock, not forced the door, just opened it, like they belonged there. And that's where everything just fractures. Because who has a master key? Staff, or someone who's not supposed to, but managed to get their hands on one. I kept going back to that guy from the lobby, the way he just appeared when I arrived, the ease with which he offered to help. Did he have a key then? Was he waiting for someone to show up alone? No one ever asked me to identify anyone. No sketch, no follow-up. It felt like the moment the police left, everyone moved on. Except me. I stayed behind in the story, playing it on repeat. I've gone over it more times than I can count. If I hadn't screamed, if the knock hadn't come when it did, what would have happened? I can't stop circling that thought. I did stay for the rest of the trip. I forced myself to go out to pretend, but it wasn't the same. I'd come to see the city. Instead, I walked away with a feeling I can't name and a story I wish I didn't have to tell. You know when life just starts to pile on and suddenly you realize you've been running on empty for months? That was me, and Eva too, honestly. We'd been stuck in this endless loop of work, gray skies, and a winter that felt like it was trying to bury us alive. It wasn't even about wanting a vacation at that point. It felt more like survival. I remember staring at my laptop one night, bundled in 3 layers and just typing cheap beach resorts into the search bar like I was looking for a lifeline. That's how we landed on Costa Palma. It looked like the dream, a beachside all-inclusive with that perfect turquoise water you only ever see on postcards or screensavers. Everything seemed to check out: affordable, pools everywhere, a buffet that ran almost non-stop, open bar, little hammocks hanging between palm trees. We booked it without thinking too hard. And at first, yeah, it was exactly what we needed. We flew out, got our little welcome cocktails, dropped our bags, and just collapsed into that sun like we were starving for it. There was a breeze that made everything feel slower, easier. Even the buzz of other tourists felt far away, like background static. For the first 2 days, we did nothing but float between beach chairs and the bar. I didn't even check my email once, which says a lot. Eva looked lighter too, like she was starting to shake the stress off. It was the first time in months I caught myself thinking, maybe everything's going to be okay. But I keep going back to that thought now, and wondering, why did it feel so calm before everything started falling apart? Was that the warning I missed? It's funny how certain things don't hit you until way after they should have. Like they don't seem important in the moment, but later they echo. That's how I feel about what the shuttle driver said that morning. He was friendly, casual, kind of half-joking in the way locals sometimes do when they're used to tourists being clueless. Something about avoiding the back roads, something about how inland gets tricky. I think he even said it twice, now that I replay it. But we were in that sun-drunk vacation mode. You know, the one where you feel untouchable just because your feet are in sand and your phone's on airplane mode. So when Eva said she wanted to explore more, maybe check out some of the nearby towns, I was all in. Honestly, I was getting bored of the resort loop. Swim, drink, eat, repeat. It felt like we were just floating. San Lucero was the nearest town with a rental place. No Mustangs or anything, just these compact cars lined up under the sun. We grabbed the least dented one and hit the road, thinking we were being adventurous. I remember laughing when we saw signs with names we couldn't pronounce, bumping along roads that felt more like trails. It felt like freedom. It felt harmless. But that comment the driver made, that tiny warning that barely registered, it's like a siren in my head now. Because I keep wondering, what if that was my chance to reroute everything? What if I'd taken that 30 seconds of caution seriously? The thing is, no one ever thinks they're walking into trouble. You just keep driving, thinking the road will take you somewhere interesting. You don't realize it's taking you somewhere you can't back out of until it's already too late. There's this point when you're driving out in the middle of nowhere, where the silence stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling like you're too far from help. I didn't notice the shift at first. Eva and I were just laughing at how the car was handling the uneven road, joking about how we were going to return it covered in dust. I remember the windows were down a bit, and the jungle smell was thick, earthy, damp, and strangely sweet. Then we saw them. 3 men, just there, standing dead in the center of the dirt road, maybe 30-40 feet ahead. No vehicles, no backpacks, no reason to be there. Not a sound except for the crunch of tires over gravel slowing down. I don't even remember deciding to stop. It was like my body went into some kind of autopilot. I slowed, not fully, just enough to roll the window down a little. One of them started walking up to the driver's side, saying something I didn't understand, and that's when everything in me just screamed. I could feel it in my chest, this raw, tight pressure, like something awful was about to happen, and I wasn't ready for it. I saw one of them moving toward Eva's side too. Another was now circling around the front. My eyes caught something shiny in one guy's hand, and that's when my foot just slammed the gas. The tires kicked up dirt like crazy. I didn't look back, didn't check mirrors, just the road, just getting away. I still play that moment over in my head. What if I'd hesitated? What if the car had stalled? What were they actually planning to do? I don't know, and I think that's what haunts me most. I remember sitting in the resort's outdoor dining area that night, plates full of grilled fish and tropical fruit, music playing somewhere nearby, the kind of evening that's supposed to lull you back into feeling normal. Eva was quiet. I was quiet too. Neither of us really wanted to talk about what happened on that dirt road, but it sat between us anyway, like a shadow we couldn't shake. That's when I caught bits of a conversation from the table behind us. This couple, American or Canadian maybe, was talking in hushed, sharp tones. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but certain words just landed. Break-in, came back, and the place was torn up. Staff didn't do much. It turns out someone's room got hit while they were out on a catamaran tour. Stuff rifled through, bags dumped out, nothing major stolen, but enough to shake them. Enough that they were demanding to switch rooms. And I just sat there, fork frozen midair, thinking, it's not just us. Up until that point, I'd been telling myself maybe what happened on the road was a fluke. Wrong place, wrong time. But hearing that, it cracked the illusion a bit. The resort, this safe zone we'd retreated to, suddenly didn't feel as solid anymore. I started noticing little things. How the security guards looked more like greeters. How easy it was to walk through the lobby without being questioned. I wanted to believe we were still in control, that nothing else would happen if we just stayed on the property. But part of me knew better. The unease didn't leave after that night. It just settled into my bones like a low hum. And I kept thinking, if it happened to them, what else is happening that no one's talking about? There was this heaviness hanging over us, even though we didn't really say it out loud. After everything, the idea of just sitting around in the room for the next few days felt like we were letting fear win. Or maybe like we were wasting what was supposed to be a break from everything else. I don't know. Maybe we were both just trying to claw back some sense of control. When one of the guys working the front desk mentioned Laguna Clara, it felt like an easy win. Close by, not touristy, supposedly peaceful. He described it like it was one of those spots only locals knew about. Something off the map but worth the trouble. And after all the noise, the idea of something quiet and untouched sounded good. We told ourselves it would just be a short drive. We left mid-morning, hoping to beat the heat. The road was exactly what you'd expect. Dry, uneven, flanked by walls of tangled greenery on both sides. I remember how the sunlight flickered through the trees, how the dust kicked up behind us in little clouds. It didn't feel threatening, just remote. That was probably the point where we should have turned around, not because anything bad had happened yet, but because everything in me was working too hard to pretend we were fine, that the fear from before was just a fluke. Looking back, there was something too eager in the way we tried to make that day normal. I kept telling myself that it was okay, that we were just being cautious, but deep down I think I knew we were forcing it. Like maybe we weren't out there for peace, we were out there trying to prove something. And that's never a good reason to keep driving into the unknown. The trail leading to Laguna Clara didn't look like much. Just a dirt path scattered with wooden signs and the occasional worn-out marker nailed to a tree. But it felt quiet. That kind of quiet that tricks you into thinking you've made the right choice. At first, we just walked. The trees were dense, but there was enough light filtering through to keep it from feeling claustrophobic. Eva was a few steps ahead, brushing leaves away, and I remember thinking for a second that maybe we were finally doing something right, something calm. Then I started hearing sounds, subtle ones, leaves rustling in the wrong direction, branches creaking like something or someone was moving just out of view. I told myself it was probably birds or monkeys or whatever else lives out there. The mind plays tricks, right? That's what I kept telling myself. And then that guy appeared. He stepped out from one of the side trails like he'd been waiting. Didn't say much, just motioned ahead, like he wanted us to follow. Nothing aggressive, nothing loud, but the way he looked at us, it felt off, detached. I glanced at Eva, and she looked uneasy. Then she tilted her head slightly, and I followed her gaze. That's when I saw it, the knife handle sticking out from his back pocket. Not a tool, not a camping knife. Bigger, heavier. Everything flipped in that second. We didn't talk. We just ran. I barely remember the path. Nature exmens Weikchen. Just branches smacking my arms. The sound of something, or maybe multiple someones, rushing after us. The car couldn't come fast enough. The second we slammed the doors shut, hands were already reaching for the handles. They didn't get in. We were lucky, I think. But to this day, I still wonder what we interrupted and what they were waiting for. We dropped the car off later that afternoon. I didn't say much, I couldn't. The guy at the desk asked if everything went okay, and I just nodded, dropped the keys on the counter, and walked out. I didn't even want the receipt, just wanted to be done with it. The ride back to the resort felt like a blur. Eva didn't speak either. We just sat in the shuttle, heads turned toward opposite windows. Like maybe if we didn't look at each other, we wouldn't have to admit what had almost happened. After that, we didn't really go anywhere. We stayed holed up in our room, curtains half closed, the TV playing quietly in the background even though neither of us was watching. I'd pace sometimes. Eva would sit by the window. Meals were just room service trays we barely touched. We eventually told someone at the front desk, just enough of the truth to feel like we did the responsible thing. They listened, nodded, jotted something down, but there was no real reaction. No shock, no urgency. That's what stayed with me. The way they acted like this wasn't the first time they'd heard a story like ours. And maybe that's what stung the most. Because while we were shaken to our cores, everyone else went on sipping cocktails and booking excursions. I kept scanning faces, wondering if anyone else had been through something similar, wondering if we were just two more tourists who wandered too far. I've thought a lot about whether I'll ever go back. Not just to Mexico, but anywhere that looks too perfect in brochures. I don't think it's about fear, exactly. It's more about trust, and the sinking feeling that I ignored every sign until it was almost too late.